Welcome to Community Conversations. I'm Frederick County Executive Jan Gardner, and joining me today is John Daniels, who's the chair of the Solid Waste Steering Committee for the Solid Waste What's Next initiative. John's been with us before, and I want to welcome you back again.
Thank you.
So I'm happy to have you here. I thought we could update our viewers on what's happening with the Solid Waste What's Next initiative for people to just to refresh them a little bit. After the waste to energy project was eliminated by the prior Board of County Commissioners, a decision I agreed upon, the community asked the question, what's next? So what are we going to do for our long-term plan for solid waste? And so I decided to put out an initiative which would include a facilitated public process to gather community input, to create a list of ideas, and then shortlist them for further evaluation. Now, I also created a citizen steering committee, which you've been fortunate to chair, and I have to tell you, you've done a fabulous job of coordinating the work of the steering committee. And I also have to thank all the members of the steering committee.
They've all been very good.
They've spent a lot of time, showed up to all the meetings and all the public forums that we've had. And so I really think this is a group of people who's really interested in the topic and is really interested and willing to volunteer their time for the benefit of the community. So I thank you for that.
Which is considerable time.
It is considerable time. I think when you show people the size of the first phase draft report, they'll get an idea of, what we've done. So do you want to give us a little bit of insight on, the public forums and where we are?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the public forums and how we got to the public forums to start with. And before we do that, let me just back up a little bit and talk for the benefit of our viewers, talk a little bit about how we manage our solid waste in the county now and how we got to where we are now. Currently, the county is sending the majority, about 92% of the municipal solid waste collected in Frederick County, out of state. We're doing that because we have very limited landfill capacity and very slim chances of ever getting authority to expand that capacity in any meaningful way. Okay. So the question becomes, what's next? Well, we've been sending the stuff down the road, and that's probably a good management strategy short term, but long term we need something more, which is where this committee came in after you were sworn in as county exec. Mm-hmm. So what our charge, we were charged with working with a consultant that you graciously provided us also, which made the job a lot easier, and we were tasked with developing a program to take to the public and solicit their input to make the public part of this decision process for this long-term solution to our solid waste. That's how we got to where we are. We're just wrapping up phase one. We're in this project is two phases. Phase one is primarily the gathering the information from the public and putting it into some format and measuring it in some way that's tangible so that we can make decisions on what choices to move into phase two. So we just received our draft one, expanded summary. It's many pages, a lot of words, but some really good stuff. And I have to compliment Geosyntic and Jeremy Morris in particular for his ability to take all of that information that we received at those 5 public forums, which worked out to be about 40 criteria and 38 options if you squeeze them all together, and then break those into a manageable size so that we would have a way to evaluate them. And then we're evaluating them against what we're doing now, which is landfilling. So all of the measurements we're measuring against the status quo.
Well, I do want to just clarify for our viewers that we do recycle about 50% of our waste stream. So when you talk about 92%, you're 92% of what we have left to dispose of. So we landfill locally about 8% of that, and 92% of it we do transfer to a landfill right now in Pennsylvania. And that's been our least cost option, and it is what a number of our surrounding jurisdictions are doing. But the question is that the right long-term option? Is it sustainable? And we have to meet the state directives for moving forward towards a zero waste goal. So we have to increase our recycling increase our diversion, increase our composting efforts. So when we get these ideas, we do also then have to put them into the context of what the state is also mandating that we do. So it's very complicated.
Yeah. We do in Frederick County enjoy a very high recycling rate. We're right at 50%, maybe a little bit higher with the numbers that aren't out yet. And that's number 4 or so, 3 in the state. So it's really good. We're doing a really good job, and I commend the staff for doing that.
Yep.
As we get higher, as we go along toward this zero waste goal, we're going to be diverting 75% of our municipal solid waste to recycling, and 80% of our yard waste and 70% of our organics. So in this study, we chose to take the year 2025. The zero waste plan goes all the way out to 2045, but we chose to take the metrics from 2025 to use as our target. So we're really not that far off. We only need another 43,000 tons of municipal solid waste that we can claim either recycling or organics, and we can make our goals for 2025.
Yeah, so we are pleased to be kind of able to look at that and say it's probably something that we can reasonably achieve, and not every county in Maryland can say that. But what would you say are some of the consistent ideas that we heard through the public forums?
For options, well, we had 3 or 4 major composting, and then we have those people that want the traditional composting style, and then we have anaerobic digestion, which is a more advanced composting style. Those two were right at the top, and then we heard the resource recovery park, which was right at the top of the list. And we heard dozens more, by the way. The difficulty with all of those things is taking the options that were provided by the public and the criteria that was provided by the public and developing some meaningful way to measure those options with that criteria. And we promised the public when we started this that if you tell us you're going to shoot it to the moon, we're going to keep that in our report, and it'll go out through the fatal flaw filter, of course, but we're going to keep it there. Nothing you say is going to be thrown out. Everything's going to be listened to. And I have to say that Geosyntec and Nextlight in particular was very good at capturing all the public input. If anyone has complaints about not having had an option for public input, I don't know how we could have done that differently. We held those 5 public workshops throughout the county. We started here at Winchester Hall, Oakdale, Urbana High School, Brunswick, and Thurmont. And then we had the 6th workshop here in Winchester Hall, which was kind of a summary of all 5 of those workshops. And they were all well attended, and they were lively discussions. So if anyone believes that that our residents in the county don't have an opinion, they didn't attend these workshops.
Well, there was a lot of good dialogue,
There was some good dialogue
at some of the workshops, and some creative ideas put out there. So, you know, I do think people want us to expand our recycling, our composting efforts, and resource recovery is a big one. Can you just talk a little bit about what a resource recovery park might look like? Because different people have different ideas of what resource recovery might be.
Well, let me talk just briefly about what a lot of the people I know have a vision of a resource recovery park, and that is a facility that all of the waste, solid waste recycling, everything goes to, and then you have a satellite group of businesses around it that use some of those components to manufacture products and move on. The flaw in that particular idea about how a resource recovery park works is those little businesses don't reach the economics of scale to process. For example, you know, an aluminum processing plant wants 30 tons an hour. We don't have that in a month. So that makes it difficult. What our consultants have defined based on an input from one of our residents is a mixed waste processing facility as a resource recovery park. And the way that works is you would not eliminate the single stream recycling. You would keep that. It goes through its MRF. But your other stuff that's in the garbage can, the MSW at that time, goes through a similar process where you do a positive sort and you pull out the recyclables, and the organics is separated through another process. Some people refer to that as a dirty MRF, but technology has moved quite a ways. So I don't know if I refer to that, but your recycling and recovery rates are much higher with a process like that, but it's capital intense. So I think the recommendations that we're going to see in this report start on a little more community scale composting. Start small and evaluate and pilot project these issues and not invest a lot of capital up front. Stay on the less expensive side of the capital intent side. So I think it's going to be very interesting when we put the findings out, which I hope is the week of the 16th.
Yep, the draft report is under review for everything from how it's organized to trying to make sure the information is easily readable to the public. And that draft report should be available on the county website very soon. It will then go to a public meeting with the county council in May, and the public will have an opportunity to comment on it then. So really every milestone in this process does have a public process, and it also tries to keep the county council engaged, because whatever we do in the long term will require the support of the county council to update the solid waste management plan and ultimately to support a budget for doing whatever option or options, because it'll likely be a combination of things to move us forward to the future. So I think that this has been a good first phase, and right now we're looking at what recommendations came out of the public process, and then we'll look to see what we shortlist to evaluate in phase 2.
One additional comment, just to expand on what you said, is when this report goes up on the website, hopefully the week of the 16th, that opens a 30-day public comment period. And we'll receive comments through our online email from our website. At the end of that 30 days, when we close this, we'll take all of the comments that we have received and formulate them into to the plan before we present that to you in phase 2. So yeah, we have the option at the public council meeting. We have an option, that 30-day window for people to comment also. And there has been along an open dialogue. We've had an email, we've had exchanges with some people on emails. So the opportunity has been there to include the public in the process.
And all the meetings of the steering committee are also public. Now, for people who may want us to see the report and either read the executive summary or read the entirety of the report, can find it on the county webpage. If you put in the county webpage address /what's next, you can find that. You can also come to the webpage and search for it, and you'll also find it. And we're happy to take people's comments through the webpage or through a public process that's upcoming. Now, what is phase 2? Can you describe phase 2 a little bit, because that's what the public will begin to see in the summer and through the fall?
Yes, phase 2 is where we squeeze these recommendations down to a manageable number, 6 or 8, and we start doing a more in-depth financial analysis of how to implement them and what the cost is, what's the effect on the environment, what's the life cycle cost. I mean, all of those issues will be, but we'd be narrowed down to 3 or 4, maybe 5 at the most, combinations of options. So that phase 2 is primarily to get those options down to something that we're going to be recommending to you. And then, of course, we go home.
Are you looking forward to that? Well, I have to say, I think that you've done a great job chairing this committee. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of technical detail. I know you've read all of this report. You've interacted with our consultants. You've really provided great leadership, and I want to personally thank you for that. We will be moving into phase 2 after this report gets feedback from the citizens and the county council, and we'll be moving forward with next steps on what's next. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Community Conversations. I hope you have been updated a little bit on what the Solid Waste What Next Committee is doing and what might be in store for the long-term sustainable future of solid waste disposal, recycling in Frederick County. Thank you for joining us.